It was almost midnight. The rain outside was relentless, hammering against the glass windows of Umar's small apartment. The sound filled the silence like a heavy blanket, making every other noise vanish. Inside, the dim yellow light of his desk lamp cast long shadows across the walls. Umar sat hunched over his laptop, working on something he could barely focus on. His eyes were tired, but his mind was restless. And then, he heard it. A faint creaking sound. Slow. Rhythmic. It wasn't coming from inside his room, it was coming from the hallway. At first, he thought it might be the wind. But then he remembered. All the windows in the hallway were sealed shut. Curious, he turned his head toward the narrow corridor. At the very end of it stood a door, an old, heavy, wooden door that had been locked for as long as he'd lived here. No one had ever seen it open. Even the landlord avoided talking about it. Yet now, in the flickering glow of the hallway light, that door was moving ever so slightly, as if something on the other side was pushing it. Umar's pulse quickened. A faint light spilled from the gap beneath the door, flickering like candlelight. And then, he heard it. A whisper. So soft it was almost part of the wind, but it carried his name. Umar. His first instinct was to ignore it. Go back to his desk. Pretend nothing had happened. But the whisper came again, a little louder this time, a little more urgent. His curiosity, and maybe a touch of fear, pulled him to his feet. He picked up his flashlight from the desk, feeling the cold metal against his palm. Every step down that hallway echoed like a drumbeat. The closer he got, the more the air seemed to change. Colder, heavier, almost wet. The whisper didn't stop. Sometimes it was behind the door, sometimes it seemed to be right beside his ear. When he finally stood in front of the door, his throat went dry. The wood was old, scratched in strange patterns like something had clawed at it. His hand hovered over the handle for a moment. The metal was ice cold. Slowly, he turned it. The door creaked open on its own, groaning as if it hadn't been moved in years. Beyond it was darkness, deep, swallowing darkness. The beam of his flashlight cut through it, revealing a single wooden chair in the far corner. Dust danced in the light, disturbed by the shift of the door. On the chair sat a cracked, dusty photo frame. Umar stepped forward slowly, his shoes crunching against something brittle on the floor. He glanced down. It was fragments of glass, scattered like teeth. He reached for the frame. The photo inside showed a little girl, no older than 6, sitting in that very same chair. Her eyes, they weren't just sad, they were empty, hollow, as if they had seen something they should never have seen. Beneath the picture, in faded letters, were the words, "Bring me back." Umar's fingers trembled as he held it. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. And then, without warning, the door slammed shut behind him. The sound was deafening in the confined space. He spun around, flashlight shaking in his hand. "Hello? Who's there?" No answer. Only the sound of his own breathing, faster now, sharper. He looked back at the photo frame, and froze. The girl's face was changing. The pale skin shifted, the hollow eyes warped, until it wasn't the little girl anymore. It was him. Umar. A younger version of himself, smiling faintly, but there was something wrong with that smile. Something inhuman. And then the voice came again, clear now, and right next to his ear. "You left me. Now I'll never leave you." His flashlight flickered. The walls seemed to close in. He dropped the photo, but it didn't fall. It stayed suspended in the air, inches from his face. The younger version of himself in the picture blinked. Everything went black. Somewhere in the darkness, a scream tore through the air. The next morning, the neighbors complained about a strange smell coming from the hallway. When they forced the old door open, they found the room empty except for the wooden chair and the photo frame. Inside the frame was a picture, Umar's face, staring directly ahead, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, frozen in mid-scream. Some doors should never be opened.